Well, it's that time. It's 1300 on the East Coast, 1800 on the GMT coast. It's time for PFG Live. Hi, everyone. Mr. Gilbert from down south, way down south. Welcome aboard. Can I get a check? Check. Mr. Blodgett, welcome aboard. Wes, welcome. Thiago, welcome. Where is your motivation? That's a perennial question. Henry, welcome. Nice to see you. CJ Stevens, welcome aboard. Thank you, Mr. Blodgett, for your audio report. Outstanding. It is Sunday. So Dan's trying to be productive. He's going to get one more thing done in the shop. I'll have you know that my grinder finished a few minutes ago, and I did not run downstairs to put new parts in. I will wait until afterwards. Robert Isaac is here. All rise. Be seated. Nice to see you, sir. Warren, my neighbor, who I've communicated with already today. Welcome aboard. So we are in southern New Hampshire. If you didn't know that, New Hampshire is in the northeast of the United States. And it is partly cloudy. Temperature is 48 degrees. And the winds are west at 16 miles per hour. I can't convert that to meters per fortnight. I'm sorry. So lots done in the shop this week. A lot of fun. Video is halfway finished in editing. It should drop today. I say that a lot. It should drop today. We'll be talking about some of that, what led to that video. And there were some questions this week. So yesterday I did a random live. Some of you were there for on Instagram while I was working in the shop, and there were some questions about shop electricals, and I thought we'd spend a little time today talking about shop electrical issues. Mr. Blodgett is reporting 40 degrees and partly cloudy in Oregon. Snow the last 2 days. That's amazing. CJ Stevens reports 70 and sunny in East Tennessee. Mr. Tauber says, happy spring, everyone. Yes. So a friend of mine who I was just talking to on the phone, he is a member of the band Unburn the Candles. You should look them up. Was telling me that the trees are starting to blossom down in the Washington, D.C. area. There's actually a lot of things blossoming in the Washington, D.C. area. And he asked me what it looked like around here because he grew up here. And if I look out my window and I look through the woods, I could see snow in the woods. And I can't quite see it from where I'm sitting, but in the back of my house, there's a little bit of snow right up against the house. So we still have evidence of winter. Wes reports snow in southern Idaho. Chris reports 58 degrees and sunny, but you got to give your location. Get with the program, Chris. Mr. Isaac reports wet, cold, and gloomy in the Chicago. Oh, so my buddy to the north, Warren, said he got an inch of snow. So we got snow pellets. They're not ice pellets. No, I think we did get ice pellets yesterday. I drove into Logan Airport yesterday. I do not recommend this to anyone. Mr. Waller has joined us from Minnesota. Plenty of snow there. Thiago, you have the warning number 1. Henry, welcome aboard. 281 Kelvin in Germany and raining. Okay, Chris has revised his report. It's 58 degrees and sunny in south central Pennsylvania. Your apology is accepted. Graupel, yes. Kevin, very good. I don't think it was... I'm not sure if it was Graupel. That's a very good question. We'll have to check with my meteorologist who lives down the street. But anyway, we had a little bit of something going on. But today it's nice. It's a little dark because it's not perfectly sunny. So welcome to PFG Live, where we talk about meteorology incessantly for an hour, which is not true at all. We talk about machining and precision and technology and the philosophy of getting things right. So this week, I did make a video, which I will publish on the YouTubes, about the TL1 tool post. Now, you may recall, last week, I undertook the challenge of slicing up some titanium salami for a local guy, and in doing so, had to solve the problem of getting the correct cutoff tool, getting the correct cutoff tool set up in a tool holder. I had to buy a new tool holder, and it was quite challenging. However, we got that done. We sliced it up and we delivered. Now you're going to hear the rest of the story. We wore out the tool in doing those 20 pieces, and this past week I replaced the tool. Early in the week, I replaced the carbide cutter in the cutoff tool and figured I'll knock off the rest of the parts. It turns out I got 7 more slices out of it, but I quickly went from good quality to bad quality on the cut. So I knew it wasn't simple tool wear, and it turns out that the pressure of the cut, especially with the cutoff tool, rotated my tool post. And if you've been following on Instagram, you knew about that pretty early. So I made a project out of improving the tool post and preventing that problem reasonably expediently, without spending a whole ton of time and a whole ton of money. And I did. And it came out quite nicely, and that's what the video is about. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you some pictures and explain what the challenges were there. And thus the title of this segment, which is Spindles Shall, Toolposts Shant Rotate. And that is the challenge. Let me show you a picture of the setup, and there we go. I'll move over here. So there's the tool post. It's a Dorian V35 TC tool post, and you can see in the picture, if you're watching the video. For those of you at home, I'll describe it. The bottom of the tool post has the central hole for the stud that is used to clamp it down. But then around it, there are 4 pinholes. And those 4 pinholes we determined by measurement are 10 millimeter blind pinholes. And they're there specifically to do what we're doing today. We're pinning the tool post so it doesn't rotate. There's a T-nut with a post, with a threaded post at the top, that goes into the tool block that's on the TL1 and into a little T-slot, and then gets pins down the tool post. So you can typically, especially for light cuts, you could operate it with just the central pin, crank down on the nut, and call it a day. But if you think about it, eventually you're going to get a cut that will overcome the friction between the tool post and the tool block, and it will spin. And that's exactly what happened. So we ended up with a problem and went about trying to fix it. So what I ended up doing is spoilers, I ended up shimming the T-nut to remove any play, and we were in particular looking for rotational play. And then we fitted a pin into the T-nut, which engaged the holes on the tool post, and we're going to call that good enough. So, one of the things that we've seen in the past especially if you've been following on Instagram, is Robin Renzetti. He ditched the compound on his lathe and replaced it with a solid tool post. Is that a tool post? Or tool post block? Anyway, and that greatly increased the stiffness of his setup. On the TL1, there is no compound, but we still had the problem. So one option is to replace the tool block that has the T-slot in it, and with a custom made block that accepts the pins and provides for the lockdown stud on the Dorian tool post. That's a big project, and I wasn't in the mood for it. So we shimmed the T-nut. We made a shim. We used cyanoacrylate to attach it to the T-nut. And then we did a couple of other modifications. We upset the bottom of the hole on the T-nut so that the pins wouldn't fall through. And then we proceeded to mount the whole thing up. So measured rotation on the thing was on the order of 1 to 2/1000ths of an inch at about 1 to 2 inches. I don't remember the exact numbers, which I considered a success. So that's all set up. I did not get a chance to run a couple more titanium cuts, but that's my plan. I should be doing that today. So big success. Not a lot of time invested except for the fact that I made a video about it. And let me tell you, when you make a video about something, it will take 3 to 5 times longer than just doing it. But it was worth doing, and recorded all the wisdom on that. So expect that to come drop down today. I'm curious what you guys do for tool holding on your lathe. Now, this lathe, the TL1, is a CNC tool room lathe. So it's not a full tool changing, bar feeding CNC lathe in production. So it's a different animal. Some of you have full manual lathes. Some of you have full CNC lathes. This is sort of a CNC, kind of wants to look like a manual lathe. And now I am expecting that it's going to behave a little better and take heavier cuts. So we shall see. But all in all, I've been quite happy with the TL1 lathe. I've been quite happy with the Dorian tool post, and we will keep you apprised of what's going on. So what lathes? This is turning into the I Love Lathe episode of PFG Live. I'm curious, what lathes are you guys running, and what are you doing for tool posts? You could put it in the chat if you can, if you're live with us today. Otherwise, let's see. Wes says he's going to build a gang tool setup for your Tormach. So I have a friend of mine, in fact, MHM Machining on Instagram. Adam did exactly that. So I should put you guys together so you could talk. He is using gang tooling on his Tormach, and he does great work with it. So check it out. So Henry, I was waiting for this, says, have you considered using a multi-fix tool post? I think they are pretty good for such machines. I have considered it. I'm sort of invested in the Dorian tool holders, so the multi-fix looks great. I know Adam Booth uses the multi-fix. I believe that Stefan Gottsvinter uses a smaller series of the multi-fix. They look great, except I'm a little far down the road. Samuel Irons reports he's got a Monarch 10EE KDK wanting a BXA. Now, can we just have a moment of silence for the Monarch 10EE and just think about its magnificence? I actually know where there's a Monarch 10EE hiding in storage, and if I had room, I'd go after it. Robert Isaac says, I do the upside down run the spindle in reverse method. Works great for him on a full manual lathe with a QC tool post. My concern with that is it is literally lifting the cross slide in a direction that it's not meant to go. I'm a little concerned about that. I know it works, but if the tool pressures were high, I think something might move. Kevin Blodgett is running a 10-inch Atlas Craftsman with an AXA Aloris. Very nice. It spins if I take too heavy a cut. Welcome to the club. CJ Stevens says, I use a thrust bearing between the top nut and the tool post. I don't have to crank on the nut anymore, and the tool post does not shift. Yeah, the thrust bearing is an interesting option. I saw that recently, right? This past week, somebody was doing something with a thrust bearing. Henry says it's super common in Germany to see the multifix. Like I said, I really like the multifix, but I don't think we're going that way. Chris says, I'm here to learn. I have little knowledge to share. We're here to teach you, and we have little knowledge to share, but we do it anyway. Warren says he's got an MSC 13x40, which I think is a Taiwan machine, if it's old enough, with an AXA and the compound, and a Sheldon R15 with a BXA that really needs a CXA. So the size of the it's still showing in the picture here. The size of the V35 TC is equivalent to the CXA. So that's the size this is. This is effectively a CXA. Kevin tells me that Inheritance Machining just added the thrust bearing. Good. Yeah, I knew I saw it somewhere. I don't think on this tool post, I don't think the thrust bearing, well, I'm not sure. I want to say that there's no particular advantage, but I think you might be right. I do have a washer. You can see it in the picture up here. I do have a washer that goes under the nut, and I wonder if I replace that washer with a thrust bearing, if I'd get a little better performance. So Warren, I had a Jet 13x40 Taiwan made, and I bet you it's the same iron. And a great story about that is my makerspace, which is Make It Labs over in Nashua, New Hampshire, has my old lathe, which was just a riot. I told that story before. And that is the Jet 13x40. And that was a great machine. And they're literally wearing it out, which is fine with me. So, well, pretty cool. We may have to call this the I Love Lathe segment. So I have another project coming up, Mr. Blodgett. I hope your ears are burning. Where I will be slicing up some A2 tool steel in its soft state to make some special tools for a special person. And I've been waiting to do that. So Kevin has an application where I promised him I'd make some special, not quite laps. It's going to be a flat file, really. And we're going to make that out of A2 tool steel, but we have to make it out of 1 1/4. You see where this is going? And now I have the cutoff tool. So the titanium project is going to bleed into the A2 salami project. So we will get that going for you. Looking forward to doing that. Plus, we'll show off the new oven, the new Hot Shot, which is now paired up with the old Hot Shot and sitting in the heat treating department. So that's coming. So stand by for that. So that was the lathe report. Pretty happy about how things went. Yes, Kevin Blodgett says he's excited for some A2 salami. It's coming, but be careful how you bite it because it's going to be hard. Anyway, that will be a video, and we'll share that. And of course, Kevin, I'm going to require you to shoot some video of applying the new tools to the items that they're going to be operating on, so we can share it with everyone. So that's the Spindles Shall and Toolposts Shant segment, and looking forward to sharing some more information about the lathe. Let's see what else is going on. So I got questions this week. Yesterday during the Instagram live, the random live, about shop electricals, and Aaron Walla is here in the chat room, and he was asking some questions. So I thought I would just describe my approach to the shop electrical problem and how we've solved it. So my shop is fed off of a 100 amp breaker off of my main panel. And then we have a sub panel in the shop which distributes that. And then we have a sub panel in the shop. So if you walk into my shop from the house, you are facing west. So on the southwest, I'm sorry, on the southeast corner of the shop is the sub panel, where there is a main breaker, and there is a sub panel. And then in let's see if I get this right, the northwest corner of the shop, which is the Department of Welding department, that's where the sub panel is. Which is not too interesting, the fact that there's two panels. It just made it easier because I did it in two stages. We did the initial wiring of the shop, and then later, when the Department of Welding department got pretty busy and we added the heat treating ovens, I wanted an additional bunch of outlets, and it was just easier to put a sub panel there for the breakers. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but every time you put in a 220 breaker, it has to have, I'm sorry, I take that back. Every time you put in a 220 volt outlet, it has to have its own breaker. You don't parallel up 220 outlets. At least at the time we did this, that was my understanding of how the code was written. Kevin asks, any three-phase? I'm going to explain that in a second. So we have a bunch of course, we have a bunch of 110 volt outlets. Oh, and let me preface all this by saying this is how we roll in the United States. I know Henry enjoys probably 400 volt three-phase service to the home. Is that correct? Let me know in the chat. Here in the United States, we get typically single-phase power off the pole in the flavor of 220 volts or 230 volts, depending on how you want to say it, and a neutral, or actually it's ground as it comes from the pole. Once it hits your main panel, it becomes neutral and the two legs of power. So if you use the two legs, L1 and L2, you get 230 volts. If you use one leg going to neutral, you get 115 volts, which the average homeowner, that's all they know about. So in the shop, we have twist lock connectors for 230 volts, which are 30 amp 230 volt twist locks, each one on its own breaker. And that happens 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 times in the shop we have those outlets. So now to answer Kevin's question, is there any three-phase? There's no three-phase that's coming into the shop, but we make three-phase, and we do it two different ways. One is I have a pair of phase-perfect 10 horsepower phase converters that are brilliant. Now, each one of those is capable of feeding multiple machines, but I'm not using them that way. I'm using them to feed individual machines. One of them is on the vertical machining center, which is a 10 horsepower machine. Nothing else is connected to that. And K-Bonk says, we have two-phase here. OMG. Yeah, It's not two-phase. You know that. The second phase perfect is driving only the grinder. Okay. Every other machine that needs three-phase has a VFD on it, a variable frequency drive. For example, the Bridgeport has a VFD. The Saw has a VFD, almost. The TL1 lathe comes from the factory with a VFD internally, so it takes single phase. It does not need three-phase. So that's how I make three-phase in the shop. If I needed three-phase, K-Bonk says it's a thing, two-phase. Is that like having three-phase except one leg is out? Is that, I don't know how it works. You'll have to educate me. But that's how I make three-phase in the shop. I make it with converters, and we do not have three-phase coming in. Now, in my old shop, when I lived one town over, I'll tell you, Indiana John, give me a second. When I lived one town over, we were on the main feeder, the main high voltage feeder went right over our driveway, and I actually had the power company in, and they told me they'll give me three-phase. It would cost me $3,500 to put up a pole and 3 pigs, which is a term for the power transformers, those big cans. I needed 3 of those, 3 pigs, and a pole, and it would cost me $3,500. Now, let's just stop and think about that for a second. That is cheap. So I could have three-phase, all I could eat at the old shop, but then I started looking into the wiring and the breakers and all the infrastructure for three-phase, and I elected not to do it. Parts of New England are actually running on DC, and some of them are just running off of D cells. No, that's not true. I don't know what two-phase means, so it's possible. I'm not an expert. I am not a licensed electrician. I'm not even close, but I know there's some weird stuff that goes on. So to answer Indiana John, he says, what do you mean by the saw has a VFD almost? So the saw, which is my vertical band saw, which is a Dual ML from 1941. It's a glorious machine. That is a three-phase machine. It has this beautiful, big three-phase motor in it. And I was running it off of one of my phase perfect converters in parallel with, at the time, it was in parallel with my grinder. So I had my Brown and Sharp grinder and the saw running off of that three-phase converter. Worked great. But because I moved the saw to the opposite corner of the shop, I decided I wanted it to have its own VFD. And the reason I said almost is because that project is not done yet. So I still haven't finished it. The VFD is mounted. It's sitting there splayed open, waiting for me to go in and finish the wiring. So the almost is me. I am the delay. So K-Bonk says, bingo, Indiana John, it is an old industrial system. I guess I don't know about the so-called two-phase power. Interesting. While we're on the topic of shop electricals, I thought I would amuse you guys. My Okamoto grinder is designed for 200 volts. That's not a misprint. Not 230, not 115, 200 volts. Because in Japan, apparently, 200 volt AC is a system. So when I got the grinder, along with it came a transformer that would take 220 volts and convert it to 200 volts. Not much of a change, but it had to go through a transformer. Chris understands. So That same transformer also had taps. So if you had 460 volts, three-phase, very industrial, also common, that it would take 460 in and deliver 200 volts. No, it also, Indiana John, it also had taps for 208. So it was a really flexible system. So the way I have the grinder set up is I make 230 volt three-phase. It goes into the transformer, and 200 volt three-phase comes out and goes to the Okamoto. The 50 cycle, 60 cycle didn't matter in that design. So that was fine. In fact, on the side of the control, I'll post a picture of this later today or whatever. There is an outlet. When we look at it, we see a 115 volt outlet, and it is labeled 100 volts AC. It's not a misprint. So that's the story. I think I've pretty well described the entire electrical system in the shop. Now you might ask, well, what if you got, all the machines running? Is 100 amps enough? And the answer is, for me and the way I run the shop, and for not having employees, even when I'm working as hard as I can to get all the robots going at once, it's not a problem. So I've lived on a 100 amp single phase system for years. Would I like more? Yeah, but unless I get more floor space, I don't think it's going to matter. So that's my situation. If anybody has any shop electrical questions, I'll attempt to field them and remind you that I am not an electrical. I'm not an electrician. I am an electrical engineer, but I'm not an electrician. It turns out in the great state of New Hampshire, a homeowner can do repairs. So when we put in big stuff, an electrician will come in and do the electricals and all that kind of stuff. But when if I have to replace an outlet or wire an outlet or do that kind of stuff, I do it myself, and I'm very comfortable with it. K-Box says, I think this. He says, I think it's a delta Y thing. Same with two-phase. It's real flexible. Yeah, I don't know my deltas from my Ys, so I can't help you there, buddy. I am incapable of helping you on that one. So do you guys have any weird electrical stuff going on? How much of your shop is solar, says K-Bonk. So when my solar panels, so I do have a full solar panel system, and we have 43 panels. It is limited by the inverter. I have a little more power available from the panels than the inverter could handle. And we limit out at approximately 11 kilowatts. If the sun is shining on a perfect day, then we're pinned at 11 kilowatts getting generated. And we have a saying in the house, which is, make stuff when the sun shines. It's like make hay when the sun shines. So I will grind stones when the sun shines. I will charge my EV when the sun shines. We're actually conscious of when we're generating electric, so we don't push it onto the grid where we get credit for it, but we get more value out of the solar electric we generate by using it as we generate it. So we try, if the sun is shining, we try to be using it. I did play in the band Delta Y, and I'm glad you remember it. I've been trying to forget. Chris says, I am the delay, on his 7.5 horsepower rotary. Yeah, we could have a whole podcast about being the delay. Warren Jones says, everything I have here is weird, electrical, and otherwise. You don't have to share those details with us, Warren. It's okay. K-Bonk says, I got burnt by Delta Y. It's a mess. So, yeah, I don't understand Delta Y and why Delta and why not. So it'll have to wait. Anyway, that's the electrical update. I'll tell you another thing, especially if you have a garage shop. My garage, when I bought the house, had 6 light bulbs in the ceiling of the garage, which is a 3-car garage, which is now the shop. By the way, my kids have never seen a car in a garage. They don't even know what that means. There are these lights, these LED lights that you can buy on Amazon, because I did. They're called corn cob lights, and they look like an oversized Foster's can, and they're just like chock full of LEDs, and they look like corn cobs, right? And they put out, I think, 8,000 lumens. It's ridiculous how much they put out. And all I did, I went through a couple of phases, but you unscrew the light bulbs in your outlet, and you screw one of these things in and stand back, because they put out a stupid amount of light. And because they're LEDs, they're pretty low power consumption. So there's 6 of those in the shop for the general light, and then I have some detail lights. Yes, Dan philosophizes and says, someday we will all be old and die, and some young kid will move into the palaces we create and not understand. It's true, but I'll be dead, and I don't care. So we'll see what happens. And I'm pretty happy with my shop space. I say this cautiously because I joke around that I would like a bigger space, and maybe one day I'll go crazy and move out into a big commercial space. But frankly, it's a real interesting challenge to deal with what you've got. And I'm kind of enjoying that part of it now, and making the most of what's available. And I think we're squeezing a lot out of the electricals between the phase converters, the solar electric, the voluminous wiring properly done. I think we're squeezing as much as we can out of it. So that's the update on shop electrical. Robert Simpson says, people don't understand the shop air I ran everywhere now. Yeah, same thing. Speaking of shop air, here's a question for you. I run copper. I run 3/4 inch copper as my shop air distribution. And I've never been attracted to some of these special airline products, which are plastic coated aluminum, PEX, and some of the other products. I've always just stuck with 3/4 inch copper, and I've been very, very happy with it. I'm curious what you guys are running for air. Yeah. Dan Gilbert says, I agree. My hobby is making the shop not have dust in it. Patching holes in the wall, putting filters on, etc. Yeah, copper is the way to go, he says. Yeah, I've been very, very happy with copper for the air distribution. And it's logical. I know how to solder copper. I know a really super good plumber who might even pop in. And he helped me with a bunch of the copper. So we've got air run all around the shop, and we have a branch of air down in the basement where the 3D printer farm is and the laser is. So yeah, we have copper everywhere. And yeah, I know copper got expensive, but it's not so expensive that you can't. Yeah, just as I said that, K-Bonk's comment popped up. Have you priced out 3/4 inch copper? I have not. I have a couple of sticks of 10-foot. Was it 10 foot or more? It might be more than 10 foot copper just sitting in stock, and it's probably worth a mint right now. CJ Stevens is running Prime Fit PEX on your 60-gallon compressor. Wes says ABS in his shop. So I know one of the things I warn people about is PVC. Now, I know you said ABS, and it's not PVC, but don't use PVC piping for air. okay, it can shatter. If it goes, it's going to grenade, and that's not good. If copper goes, it's going to bend and not grenade. If PEX goes, it's not going to grenade. So do not use PVC pipe, please, for air. Dan Gilbert says, I found an old picture of the MIT shop. Dan works at MIT at the machine shop of the mechanical engineering department. And there was one pipe in the ceiling. Now it's full. I believe that. Originally, they ran everything the floor below and punched holes through the floor and ran it up to each machine. This means there are a bunch of holes that get punched through the floor tiles. Oh my God. So you have to frame that section of original steel pipe and just hang it on the wall. Indiana John correctly says any pressure vessel is a bomb. Yes. Copper will split, but it won't shatter. That's the nice thing about copper. Yeah, and Indiana John says PVC would be pretty sketchy. Please, folks, no PVC for air, okay? But the PEX, I think you can go buy PEX at Home Depot, and the fittings are the issue, but PEX is not a bad choice. CJ Stevens says, we had a PVC explosion in a shop I worked at. It sent a customer car to the body shop. No injuries, possibly a brown stain or two. Oh my God. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be around when that happened. So I've never heard anything to dissuade me from copper except for the price. And, we deal with that. So it's interesting. We've talked about electrical infrastructure, and that led logically to air infrastructure in the shop. And I suppose if we had, big industrial shops where we had a dozen machines, we'd be talking about coolant plumbing in the shop. Thankfully, we don't have to do that. In fact, all of my coolant needs are managed by making my own distilled water and using, mixing it myself. So, yeah, lots of infrastructure. And when it all works and you don't have to think about it anymore, that's the best, because then you can just get to work. Okay. I think we did it on shop electricals. I got an interesting question. Aha. K-Bonk asks, water/moisture of compressed air, ? So I've gone through a couple of generations of air, and I've done some interesting things. So in my shop right now, let me back up one generation. So I used to have a piston compressor, a Quincy, an automatic drain valve on it, and I had an air refrigerator, an air dryer. I had two air dryers, a little one and a bigger one. The bigger one was a piece of shit, and I'm very happy we got rid of it. It was a made in China piece of junk, which came from Easton compressor, I think. I don't even know if they're still around. It was horrible. Anyway, the most important things I've done are on my distribution system around the shop. There's a pitch in the pipe, and it gets fed at the top, and when it gets to the bottom, there is a drain. That's number one. Number two, every tap off of that main line is a reverse trap. So it goes up, over, and then down, and that is another preventative measure. And now that I have the Kaiser compressor, I have a Kaiser SX5T compressor that has a built-in dryer with a really nice system. They're very proud of it, and they should be, because it will accumulate water and then open a valve and spit the water out a pipe, but not any air. It's nice. It's nicely done, and it works great. And I have a hose going into a 5-gallon jug, and it's never gotten over 2 gallons before I emptied it. So that system works fantastically well. And then when I do operate my drain valve, I've never seen any liquid come out of it. I have very, very dry air now. So thanks to the Kaiser system, I've been very happy. But before that, I did have an air dryer, and I did have a little plastic bottle on it, and it also didn't get much. And every now and then, I'll walk up to the big valve in the shop at the lowest point, and I will open it. Now, one little luxury thing I did in the shop is I hard piped that outside and pointed down, and it's got a little, vinyl siding, nice cover over it. And every now and then, when I open that valve, it just blows out. I don't have to think about, the other end of it, and then I close it. A couple of seconds, and we're done. So I have had zero moisture issues in the air system now for 2 generations of air, which represents about 15 years. It is worth putting some thought into it. Now, in my previous shop, I take it back. My zero moisture claim is only 12 years. In the previous shop, I designed it wrong. So let me share with you how not to design an air system. I did have the pitch, okay? No, I didn't. I didn't have the pitch. That was before I even had that wisdom. So I had the distribution line going around the shop, 3/4 inch copper, and then at every wherever I wanted to drop, I had a T, and it came down to basically belly button level, and I had my quick disconnect, and then it continued down to a valve. So that was a low point. However, here's the error. I had 7 low points. So if you wanted to drain the system, you literally had to go around, open and close 7 valves, okay? The reverse trap at the top eliminates that, and you have 1 low point. That's the first bit of wisdom I got from making the mistake the first time. The second bit of wisdom I got from finding some ancient document about how to design an air system was, in fact, that pitch, to feed it from the high and go all the way down to the low. And then finally, putting in a proper air dryer was the last piece of the puzzle. And, between each of those things, it's been a great system. Absolutely don't have to think about it at all. I check it every now and then. I have a valve on the bottom of my pressure tank. I have an 80-gallon pressure tank. I've never seen a drop of moisture come out of it. So there you go. That's the air system. Now we don't ever have to talk about air systems again. The last thing I did to improve the quality of life with the air system is I got myself like a 4-inch air gauge, a pressure gauge, and I put it, so now when you enter the shop from the house, right in front of your nose, right in front of your face is an air gauge, a big air gauge, and you can just visually check the system pressure, because you can't hear the compressor anymore because it's in the basement. That's the other thing I changed. Because it's nice and quiet, it lives in the basement. So those were all the improvements that I did on air system. Yep, Robert Simpson says pitch is a concern in water drains too. Absolutely. You have to think about pitch your pipes. That's what I'm saying. Pitch your pipes. That was the backup band when I went to see Unburn the Candles, and they were good too. Crazy bassist. So I got a question, was it yesterday? On the Instagram Live, have I ever done anything with Chat GPT? And that got me thinking about this whole revolution in AI. So, when I was in school at MIT, there was the AI lab. So I was aware of AI in 1980. But really, it has not become something that the general public has ever even heard the words about until relatively recently. And now, with these publicly available tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E, everybody knows about it and everybody's talking about it. So ChatGPT is a text-based AI system that you have access to, and you literally can just type a question, ask it to do something, and it will do it. And it will sound really authoritative when it does it, even if it's wrong. So I've played with it. It's pretty interesting. And then I started hearing about students like getting their papers written by just giving the assignment to ChatGPT. Well, the teachers are not stupid, okay? They figured this out pretty early. So the other day I heard my son. No, that's different from Media Lab. So the AI lab was totally separate from Media Lab. They are not the same thing. I mean, everybody talks to everybody, but they were totally different buildings, different mindsets. I mean, now they have what's called CSAIL, or Computer Science and AI Laboratory or something. They kind of merged the computer science and AI. They were separate back in the day. Back in my day, we didn't use artificial intelligence. We used the real thing. So anyway, so ChatGPT, you could just type stuff at it. Say, write a speech as spoken by Julius Caesar declaring eggplant parmesan the best food ever, and it will do it. Then there's another AI called DALL-E, DALLE, in tribute to an artist, DALL-E, and it does graphical things. And you can say, make a painting in the style of Van Gogh of a Haas TL1 lathe, and stand back, because it will do that. So back to the original question, have I ever used, the user said ChatGPT, but I'm going to just substitute AI. Have I used AI in any of my stuff yet? If you look at the YouTube videos I recently released, there was a short video I did about audio for video, which was it was the experiments I was doing with microphones like this one, and it turned into a video. Well, if you look at the thumbnail for that video, you'll see an emoji. That's not an off-the-shelf emoji. I directed DALL-E 2 to generate that graphic. And it was about the fifth go-around of describing what I wanted that I got what I wanted. And even then, I didn't know how to tell it to give it to me on a clear field with no shadow, blah, blah, blah. So I had to take that graphic into a Photoshop and just do a teeny bit of editing to it. But that image never existed before on planet Earth. And I had DALL-E make it. So did I ever use it for anything practical? Yes. I would say that is the very first practical use of modern AI that I have used for anything. Now, I heard my son, he's in high school. I heard him talking about ChatGPT, and I was getting concerned because of the potential for cheating. And I was getting all, ready to do the father thing and wave the crooked finger in his face. And I said, well, how are you using it? And he said, Well, I write a paper and then I give it to, I ask Chat GPT to critique my paper. And I'm like, he stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, that's actually pretty brilliant, because you're not asking it to cheat. You've written the paper, you've done the research, you've cited your sources, and now you're handing it over to this AI and say, please critique this. And it might actually find some things that are useful. You know, there have been products like Grammarly, which is a subscription service where you can give it stuff you've written and it will check grammar. It'll actually do it in real time, and that kind of thing. And he was basically saying that this is like Grammarly on steroids, and I couldn't argue with that. It was pretty interesting. So think about that. Other folks in the maker world have been asking ChatGPT to write Python code to achieve certain things, and they've been successful. Perfect? No. I've never heard of it coming out of the chute as something that just works. But maybe getting most of the heavy lifting done? Quite possibly. So, I don't know. Let's see. Maybe we can get ChatGPT to write us some G-code. Please produce G-code for a Haas TL1 lathe to generate a chess piece, a pawn. I don't know. Am I going to try it? No, I'm not. I like my tools too much. I like my lathe too much to try it. But that might be something interesting. So anyway, that's my take on AI. I will be happy to take any of your questions on any topic, and we'll use those to wrap up our day here. Meanwhile, I'm going to have a sip of tea. I hope you'll excuse me. So K-Bonk, you said like you were going to say something but wasn't sure yet. Oh, while you guys are thinking of questions, if you have any questions, I will just remind you of a couple of things. The audio portion of this video is a podcast, and it's called PFG Live, and it is available on your favorite podcatcher. We are published with Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and then various other apps use the same databases as those two, and basically in 95% of the cases you'll be able to find us. Art That Makes Art, which is Wes, says you can check the program in a G-code simulator. That's true. K-Bonk, thank you. He says your son is a thinker. Thank you very much. I think so too. He's okay. Don't tell him I said so. It'll go to his head. Another thing I'll remind you that if you're interested in getting yourself some PFG stones, precision ground stones for the precision machinist, you can go to pfgstones.com and I'll make them for you. In fact, I'm making them right now. So Chris asks, was looking at your angled PFG stones. We say beveled, you say angled. It's okay. Does the combination of the two grits make a difference for a large dovetail? Doesn't it wear one portion more? So you can use the bevel that has the two grits showing. You could use them just like you would use any other surface on the PFG stone. It is ground the same way. Will they wear differently? Yes, but PFG stones, if you're using them properly and not using them for, removing the dross from a flame cut, the wear is negligible. So, yes, you could use that surface. And when you order your bevels on your PFG stones, you get to choose which way you want it beveled. Okay? So you get to choose that. Chris Carl Tauber says, when you make beveled stones, do you make parallelograms so both grits are available? No. The reason for that is work holding. Putting a bevel on both sides of the stone is a real pain in the neck from a work holding standpoint. And it's not clear to me whether it's necessary. If you I don't want to say this because it would screw up my process if you needed it. But if you came to me and said I want it that way, I'll accommodate and we'll figure it out. But I don't recommend it. Samuel Irons says, do you think you could power a 10EE motor generator type with a VFD? I was using an RPC. Motor generator type. Yes. So here's the thing about VFDs is one VFD goes with one motor, period. In fact, the manufacturers don't even recommend using a connector, that it gets wired to a motor. One VFD gets wired to one motor. So if you're driving a motor, absolutely. The nice thing about VFDs is the soft start. You can program it to accelerate that motor however you want. And I think that's good for all the mechanicals involved. Warren Jones says, this whole AI thing seems like an excuse for being lazy. That is incorrect. Oh, Warren, yes, thank you for your referral, Warren. I actually saw that order come in. So, Warren, you've earned your referral fee, and that thing that you wanted, the thing is coming. Don't worry, and we'll go for a cheeseburger. So those are all the questions. So I think we covered everything. I'm also noting with interest that I'm starting to run out of stock on balancing rings. So I'm about to tool back up to do another run of balancing rings. I tend to make them about 100 at a time, and I have to do it. So we're going to get on that real soon now. So expect to see some CNC action. Dan catches me before I close this thing up with, I have a question, comma, and we will now patiently wait for Dan's question while I have a sip of tea. Dan says, could you quickly review some auto collimators? Dan, can I quickly do anything? I'm not sure. I am not an auto collimator expert. So the answer to that is no. I'm even probably much more of a student than you on that topic. So I don't think I have a lot of wisdom on auto collimators. I apologize. K-Bonk says, I have heard, can't confirm, that a VFD will mess up the switch gear in a Samuel Irons. He was talking about a 10EE. Yeah, you guys talk, you connect to each other offline. I don't know the answer to that. Indiana John says, would you consider doing aluminum balancing rings? I have not thought about going aluminum. Why would you want aluminum? There's no inherent problem with aluminum, but I have not considered it. Okay. Gotcha, Dan. So that's an interesting question. The 10EEs, the Monarch 10EEs had some interesting stuff in them electrically, so which I have no knowledge of. But vintagemachinery.org, Keith Rucker, is up to his elbows in exactly that problem. So go to his channel, vintagemachinery.org, Keith Rucker, and look at his videos on the subject, because he's been working on a conversion, and he might have all the answers for you there. Yes, Greenwood, excellent question. He says, I have a toolmaker friend that I got a hard Arkansas stone that is flat ground, from whom I got an Arkansas stone that is flat ground. The feel is very different from a PFG stone. Thoughts? I don't think it can work exactly like a PFG stone. Yes, the difference is that the Arkansas stone has no pores in it, and it has no place for the swarf that it cuts to go, if there is any. That people often ask me about PFG stone grits. The only real importance of the grit of a PFG stone is the fact that the coarser stones have more places for material to go and get out of the way, whereas an Arkansas stone tends to be very dense and it doesn't really have a place for the swarf to go. So that's a major difference, and that's probably why the feel is so different. I hope that answers your question. I actually got some Arkansas stones and played with the idea of grinding them, but we never got anywhere with that. Okay, I just read all your comments. No questions, lots of agreement and chatting amongst yourselves, which is excellent. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Oh, happy to help, Chris. Wondering what two different grits do for a PFG. So if you go to pfg.gg or pfgstones.com, right there, pfgstones.com, somewhere on the information page, I specify the grits for both the silicon carbide round stones and the aluminum oxide stones. So at least you know what we're talking about. But you can't think about grit the same way because we're not doing material removal, which only happens with sufficient pressure. The sufficient pressure comes from the non-flat situation, right? Okay. You guys are awesome. Thanks for joining me today on a Sunday. This has been a lot of fun. If you have questions, ideas, or folks that you would like to see guest on PFG Live, please send them along to me. You could reach me via direct message on Instagram, links in bio, and we will try to accommodate. I have a couple of names of people that need to be guests soon, and we will try to get them on. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. I actually have to get back in the shop and finish making stones for you. 6-inch stones today. Take care, everyone. Great talk.